So that's the overview. So let's start getting into the detail here, because this is what people are really going to get hung up about, and I imagine the text will reflect this. We've seen the population of the UK, or at least the people who get airtime on the mainstream media, effectively wanting to bring back hanging for dealing with the people who are rioting and looting. Let's have a look at image 15, if we could, please, because there is something very strange about this dress. Ian, what are your observations about what we're actually seeing here?
Well, this is an observation that I've basically been making pretty much ever since the photographs and the film footage started to come into the public domain. Because what is very, very striking is that, I mean, this iconic picture, I think this appeared on at least 2, if not 3, front pages of the national press, and was certainly on the inside pages of many others. And yet, the close-up of this picture, and I blew it up to take a look at it, this guy is basically wearing a brand new tracksuit and brand new trainers. And of course, he's masked and gloved as well.
And I mean, you wouldn't wear your best to go down the allotment to do your gardening, so I assume there's a little bit of disparity here, that you would go out in brand new togs to riot.
Well, I have a friend who lives in Northern Ireland, and was certainly very active during the Troubles. Right. And their observation was that if you knew you were going out onto the streets and you knew that you were basically going to be in a confrontational situation with the police or the army, you certainly didn't put on your best clothes. And much of the film footage that we see almost shows people in like a regulation uniform of black or grey hoodie. Yep. And where they're masked, they're either wearing ski masks or a scarf across the mask. But it almost looks as though somebody was dishing out brand new hoodies to these people before they went out on the streets. And this actually fits in with a bit of the hypothesis from when this first broke, because as is well documented, the trigger is supposedly the assassination, and it was an assassination, of Mark Duggan. Yes. Because what we know from information that is in the public domain now is that the initial claim that Mark Duggan fired on a police officer is not true. The bullet that was lodged into the police radio apparently is a police issue bullet, and the origin of that bullet has yet to be explained. The bullet that killed Mark Duggan, I understand, was a single dum-dum bullet. Right. Now, when did we last see dum-dum bullets in the news? This was the events of 6 years ago now, July 22nd, 2005, when Jean-Charles de Menzies was assassinated with, I think it was 7 dum-dum bullets to the head, 3 in the shoulder, and 1 missed. Right. So, we've got, and in fact, dum-dum bullets, my understanding is that they are illegal under the Geneva Convention. And yet here we have dum-dum bullets being used on the streets, or once in the underground, and now on the streets of London. So Mark Duggan was effectively assassinated. The night after, of course, was the night that the riots kicked off. Now, I had a very, very interesting phone call from somebody who was very close to what was going on there. Right. And they called me and said, Ian, something really strange is happening here, because the police have been instructed to stand back, to basically let this happen. And we've heard this, and the excuse that we've got is that the police didn't want to get into any bad public relations for killing a man again, which is what happened the last time we had any sort of trouble. So I take it you don't buy that. Well, I think the police don't buy that. I mean, I think that there are many people within the police who feel that they are basically being set up to fail here. Right. Now, let's understand that, I mean, there are many other factors that kick into play here. I mean, not least is the awareness in the public domain that 333 people have been, let's say they died. Right. Some under very dubious circumstances whilst in police custody. And not a single police officer has been brought to account for any of those. And that's over the last few years, isn't it? I think that's over the last decade or so. Right. Yep. So, I mean, it wasn't overnight.
Sure.
By the way, we'll talk about Rick Parry of Texas maybe later, and he's actually sentenced more people to, or almost the same number of people to death in the same period. But anyway, we'll come to that later. But, you know, so consequently what we've got here is a situation where the police, many people within the police, feel that they could have nipped this in the bud had they been given the opportunity to, you know, address the issue. And they could have certainly probably kept it to fighting in the streets as opposed to, you know, the rampant looting and firebombing of some of the stores. But then we have another issue, because one of the bits of feedback that I got, again from somebody very, very close to what was occurring, was they made the observation that the fire of in Tottenham, of the, was it Carpetright?
I think that's the one. That's
the Art Deco building, yes. Number
14, image 14, if we can have, please.
The observation is here, and this is from somebody who, shall I say, certainly has experience of this kind of incident. And their observation was that this does not look like arson. This looks like an incendiary device. This looks like almost a military attack on a building. Now, at the moment, of course, this is you know, absolute conjecture for sure. But I wouldn't be making these observations if the comments that I have received, and by the way, I'm not talking single source here. I'm talking multiple source.
Sure.
If the comments that I had received, you know, weren't from people who literally are very, very close to, you know, what was occurring here. So, you know, what we have seen is a number of situations during the week where the police appear to have been literally stood down. And then we have this incredible situation that was only reported in the local press in Westbourne Grove, which was, I think, about a little over a week ago now.
So that's West London.
In West London, in West London, where gangs of youths who are not indigenous to that particular area, but again, from, you know, people in the know, this was more than one gang, and so it would have seemed that these gangs who don't normally communicate with each other actually coordinated, even to the extent of hiring minibuses, apparently.
So this is three gangs who normally beat the living daylights out of each
other. Well, that's
other.
the information that we have, yes. It was three gangs, apparently, at least three, who don't normally see eye to eye, and yet somehow they are coordinated into hiring minibuses to come into West London, and then they launch literally a raid on the area. I mean, going into pubs and restaurants, and I think it was centred on the Ledbury Tavern. And of course, if there's anybody out there, you know, who is familiar with what I'm talking about, is anybody listening from the Westbourne Grove area, then please, you know, text in and correct us if our information is not correct. But I was repeating this observation at an event last Sunday, and before I even mentioned the name of the tavern, there was a lady in the audience who said, "Yep, Ledbury Tavern."
So somebody, local knowledge, already know where you're talking about before you say the name.
Exactly. And these gangs were going into the pubs and the restaurants, literally taking wallets and jewellery, because they knew that there was not going to be any police presence. Now, how did they know this? How did they know this? And then after they raided the pubs and the restaurants, they were apparently going up the streets, kicking in doors and windows, and then literally stealing from people's houses while the people were still in the houses, which is very, very unusual.
I was going to say, it's very, very rare for burglaries to happen when people are actually within the building still.
And the other piece of information that we have is that there were, I mean, it was very specific actually, there was at least 49 calls within the first 15 minutes of this going down, and the police were instructed to stay inside the station. Now, what is going on here?
So this has come from above. Someone above has told them to do a complete stand down.
Exactly. And of course the reaction from the people of the area is to demand stronger action. The police aren't up to the job. We've got to have the military on the street. And in fact, I think it was in The Sun, there was a poll that said 70% of the people polled supported the idea of live ammunition being used on the looters.
It's crazy stuff.
Well, this is the duplicity, because a few months ago, of course, there was outrage at the suggestion that Gaddafi was using live ammunition on the protesters in Libya.
Rules for one, different rules for
exactly,
here.
because our guys are wearing suits and ties.
And it seems to be there's this summary justice, courts staying open all night to get the people through. If we have a look at image 16, just to refresh people on the memory of this one, you've got council flat occupants being alleged to be looters. We're not sure of the basis. Was it actual factual? Do they have witnesses, etc.? So we've actually got that going on out there.
This is summary justice, Alex.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that should be complete anathema to the British people.
It's the realms of Judge Dredd. That's it.
It is, because this is apparently before any. Apparently there was a charge had been laid, but there was no conviction. So before any conviction, before under British law, an individual is found guilty beyond reasonable doubt. What we're seeing here is the application of Napoleonic law, which is of course the main law of the EU, which is basically you're guilty of anything you're accused of until you've proven yourself to be innocent. But here what we see is the outrageous situation where families are being evicted from their homes before there is any conviction.
And very quickly before the break, if we have a look at image 17, this is the case of the Facebook 2, shall we call them, where these are two guys who one night decided that they were going to try and encourage everyone to riot in Warrington, but nobody turned up. So what was the conclusion of that then?
Well, this is absurd. Yeah, I mean, these guys, these young men, I mean, admitted that they were drunk when they did it. It seemed like a good idea at the time, like many things when you're drunk.
Yep.
And they put a Facebook page up calling for a riot in Warrington, and then when they sobered up in the morning, realised it wasn't a smart idea, pulled it down, but they were still arrested, and now they've been sentenced to 4 years. Now, I'm pleased to see that there are many people from within the police and the legal profession basically are making the observation that this is just outrageous. I mean, this is, collective insanity demanding outrageous levels of justice for these young men who have basically done something stupid. Meanwhile, as we finish the first segment of the show, meanwhile, the banksters and the politicians that have fleeced this country are basically getting off scot-free.
Gotcha.